This is a collaboration workshop between BYU Idaho Counseling Center and BYU Idaho Wellness Center. And we're talking in here, we've been talking for the past several weeks about skills that we can use to better understand and manage things like stress and anxiety and depression, even trauma, relationship distress. We're talking about skills that and also just remember that this is a workshop, so this advice is general advice, so please don't assume that it applies directly to you. Don't consider this as in kind of individual or group therapy. It is a work. So just a reminder, since we are here at BYU Idaho, I sometimes will make references to spiritual ideas, and just know that these are my interpretations of things. Please don't hold the university responsible or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints responsible for the interpretations I give of certain spiritual thoughts. So in here, we talk about how emotional disorders like anxiety and depression, those things are the result, they result from your brain trying to treat emotional dangers and threats as if they're immediate physical dangers. And when that happens, it causes a lot of disruption in the body and mental health. So I've talked to you about 4 ways to begin to change this for yourself. So all of us have these experiences to one level or another. And one of the ways that we can begin to change that is by actually finding yourself in your safety. Begin to notice that you're having fear responses, and then notice that you're safe. And when we do this, we're activating our frontal lobes. This is your conscious self. Next, we want to move to, if you know you're safe, then ease your lizard brain. You all have one. It's actually your autonomic nervous system down here in your hind brain. It's what you've probably heard more commonly as your fight or flight, or your kind of your freeze response in your brain. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the lizard brain. It's a very highly reactive part of the brain. That's why I call it the lizard brain. But what we want to do is help to calm that down. And we use that by just getting the body to relax when we're in the presence of safety. The next thing, and we've been talking about this for the past couple of weeks, and we'll be talking about it today more, and also probably next week. But we're talking about how to assure our security guard. This is kind of a midbrain structure. It's the part of your brain that is there to tell the lizard brain when you are in danger, to get you activated. So this is the part of the brain that's trying to decide when you're safe and when you're not, or when to seek pleasure and when not to. It's the part of the brain that helps make those decisions, and this is all non-conscious. And then the last part of this that we'll talk about in the last few weeks of the semester is how repetition literally changes the structures in the brain, and that we literally have hope in the brain. It's not just a metaphorical thing. And if you've missed any of this information, if this doesn't make sense to you, what I've just shared, you can always go to the sites.google.com/view/fear-less. And there I have links to prior video recordings of these sessions, and also other information, so you can get more information about this fearless emotion management. One of the ways that we can begin to help our security guard be reassured, to kind of calm it down, to change the meaning in the movie, is we can give it a different perspective. So maybe we can't change what is happening. Maybe we can't do anything about the things that are happening in our life, but we can change the way our brains perceive what is happening. So here's an example of how that might happen. So you may or may not know this, but down in Utah, there's actually a place where you can go and you can pay them to induce an anxiety event for you, kind of a panic event, like a panic attack. You have to pay them. You do have to sign a waiver before they'll do this for you. And here are the rates. So an adult costs about $69.95. If you're a senior citizen, you can get a discounted rate, $63.95. And if you're a youth, it costs you about $52. So pretty good deal. People are actually going to this place to invite them to induce a panic event for them. So interesting, people are actually making money on this already. And this is where it's at, right? The goon, they'll throw you on this ride that will throw your body around in such a way that you actually end up having a panic event. And people are like, oh, that's not what a panic event is. That's actually physiological. There's no difference between the experience you would have on this ride and the experience you would have having a panic attack. Physiologically, they're the same. If people show up at the ER for having a panic event because it hurts, right? Their heart is pounding, their adrenaline is going, they're breathing hard, and it becomes painful, and they're worried they're having a heart attack. They get checked out by the doctor. They're actually not having a heart attack. They're having a panic event. It's not actually dangerous, but it feels dangerous because it hurts and it's scary, just like this ride. It actually is intense. So why am I bringing up this? These people have figured out a way to turn the freeze, fight, or flight response into thrill or excitement. Right? And that's the big switch. They've just gotten a different perspective. Here, these people want to have the panic event, whereas often people who have panic attacks don't want them. And that's the whole key difference. So what we're going to do is try and change the perspective. So it turns out in the brain, if you deeply and truly want to have anxious feelings, your security guard is going to have a hard time thinking that they're dangerous for you. It's pretty powerful. So now if you actively use your frontal lobes to truly want to, and this is where, if this isn't for everybody, and for those who like it, it works very well, that's get excited about your panic events. If you happen to be lucky enough to have panic attacks, you can actually learn to get excited for them. And I'll share you a resource that you can learn a little bit more about that in a minute. But the whole idea is we're going to get this frontal lobe really activated. And when we do that, that can begin to override the lizard brain, that kind of fight or flight, and the security guard. And there's something interesting about the way that this happens. I've only told you about 2 neural pathways that leave the lizard brain. There's actually a third one. Right? There's this other neural pathway here that leaves the lizard brain, and it innervates the facial structure and the upper chest body region. Here's what's really interesting about it. So we know already about the freeze, fight, or flight. We know about those pathways, right? The dorsal vagal, parasympathetic, and the sympathetic. We learned about those weeks ago. Here is something that's really interesting, though. There is this third pathway, the ventral vagal parasympathetic nerve. We call it the social engagement system. When this nerve pathway is activated, it does something really fascinating to the other nerve pathways. So now, if this flow is engaged, if the social engagement system is activated, and we'll know that in my face, we can see this on people, right? They're smiling more. We can see the twinkle in their eye. Those are all indications that the social engagement system is activated. When those are activated, it actually literally turns fear into something like flow. So now all these weird physical sensations I'm having, now maybe instead of calling it a freeze response, we call it intimacy. Under the freeze response, the body is shutting down to conserve energy because it's too dangerous in the moment. When flow is happening, that becomes intimate. It slows down enough that we can connect even physically with the people around us. And that requires the body to slow down and allow people to engage in healthy physical contact. The fight or flight, so that other response that starts happening when the social engagement network is activated, these actually turn into play, right? And that is what is happening when people pay money to go to a theme park like Lagoon. This is how they turn the freeze, fight, or flight response into thrill or excitement. In other words, play. The thing that was scary now becomes desirable, and so now it's fun because we activated this other neural pathway. And this is not my research, right? Comes from Dr. Steve Porges, who's done a lot of research on this. And that one of the ways that we really begin to help people out of anxiety and depression and PTSD is to somehow get this ventral vagal parasympathetic nerve activated. It allows people then to connect with others, which brings increasing senses of safety to that person. And if you're interested, you can always look up more, Steve Porges, or get his clinical book if you're that interested. But essentially, that's what we're talking about. There's also, so I said, hey, if you're interested in learning more about this, learning really how to turn panic events into something that you really want, this book, Dare, by Barry McDonough, he does a great job in giving you strategies. He uses the term Dare to actually begin to help you reinterpret these body sensations that maybe you didn't like so much before. He'll teach you how you can actually learn to enjoy them. And the moment you do, you're going to activate your ventral vagal nerve. You're going to reinterpret things, and your security guard will let go of that fear response. So this is JC Larson. She's our social work intern.
So today, the method that I want to teach you guys for assuring your security guard is something called a self-sooth box. This is something that I first learned about from a DBT workshop, which is dialectical behavior therapy. But much like the things that Brother Johnson teaches in this workshop, the principles that it's founded on can be found in all different areas of study. So this is a research-based strategy, and I hope that you guys can get something useful out of it. So the goal of self-soothing is that it allows us to, of course, assure our security guard. So many of us have never learned how to self-soothe, which essentially means that we don't know how to do simple things to help ourselves calm down or feel more relaxed. So the whole goal of a self-soothe box is that you experiment and find different things that work well for you. And once you have found those things, you can gather them all together almost in a type of emergency first aid kit, except for instead of being in physical distress, you're in emotional or mental distress. That way you have a small package that you can turn to that brings you comfort and helps you calm down. So much like Brother Johnson just talked about, the whole goal of self-soothing is that we take a break and recenter ourselves. Our security guard doesn't understand the difference between our imagination and real life. So when we have all these feelings, racing heart, anxiety, worry, fear for the future, we want to remind our bodies that these are just movies and that we're the ones in control. So if we move our feelings and our emotions from an unmanageable state to a manageable state, we're able to communicate with our security guard. So before I get into the exact elements of a self-soothe box, I want to take some time real fast to clarify what it is and what it isn't. The point of a self-soothe box and of using one is to remind you of your worth, to have an uplifting and calming influence. It's to create new emotion, to calm down and relax, and to be kind to yourself and allow yourself some comfort and even pleasure. It is not a distraction or a way to intensify current emotions. It's not a way to escape or avoid your problems. The goal of it isn't to wallow in sadness or your stress. It's not a way to beat yourself up or punish yourself for not being calm in the first place. The whole idea behind this is that you are calm and you're accepting the reaction that you've had to something and you're wanting to move forward. So now I'm going to dive into what it actually is. So a self-soothe box, it can be a beautiful ornamental box that's an heirloom in your family. It can be a Walmart bag. It can be a backpack, it can be a paper bag, really any small container that will allow you to put items inside. And you want to get items that will engage all 5 of your senses. So sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. You can use something really strong. So even if you don't find a mint flavor enjoyable, that strong taste could still give you something to focus on, and that can help calm your heartbeat and bring you back to the present moment. So it doesn't have to be things that you really enjoy, but generally those are the things that help us calm down and focus the best. So some common elements for a self-soothe box include, for sight, a picture of someone you love. You could blow bubbles, because I don't know about you guys, but have you ever looked at bubbles in the sunlight and the way the sun makes them like iridescent and they have all these rainbow colors? It's fascinating. I could stare at that for hours. Funny pictures, getting outside, looking at nature, pictures of baby animals. For sound, maybe you have a music playlist that helps you relax, or nature sounds, white noise. For smell, aromatherapy is really big, and lavender is one of the classic scents that helps people calm down. Maybe a favorite perfume that reminds you of someone you love, pine needles, a certain candle. And then for taste, like I mentioned earlier, you could have a mint, sour candies or hot cinnamon candies also have very strong flavors. Gum, a favorite snack, maybe a piece of chocolate. And then for touch, you could have stress balls, a soft object like a small stuffed animal. You could have Play-Doh, silly putty, maybe lotion. That one's kind of a 2-for-1 because it's a touch and a scent. Rubber bands, a Rubik's Cube. That's a personal favorite of mine. I have a few mini Rubik's Cubes. They're still 3x3, but they're just smaller, so they're really easy to just throw in your pocket. And then those fidget gadgets, the fidget spinners or other things. So looking at these, you can see that there's a huge variety of things that you could put in a self-soothe box. But the part I want to emphasize is that it's really individual to you. So to kind of illustrate what I mean, I'm going to walk you guys through what I have in my self-soothe box. So this is a little comic from The Simpsons. In this episode, the son is trying to find something to bring for show and tell. And the mom says, "Why don't you just bring this potato?" And he says, "Mom, because it's a potato, like what? That's not important enough for show and tell. Why would I bring that?" And her response is, "I just think they're neat." And this kind of became an internet meme after this episode came out. I've seen a lot of people, they'll take just this last comic strip and they'll, over the potato in her hand, they'll edit a picture of a Star Wars movie, or maybe, I don't know, an actor that they like, or a type of cookie. So the point is that if you like something and it makes you happy, you don't really need a reason to justify that. If you like something, if you just think it's neat, that's great. It's something you could include in your self-soothe box. So, make sure I look for it. So for me, these are a few things that I wouldn't put in my self-soothe box, and I'll explain why. I love Dr. Pepper. I think it's the tastiest, best flavor on the planet. But I also tend to have a fast heart rate when I'm nervous or anxious. So if I'm overexcited and I'm trying to calm down and I go to my self-soothe box and there's Dr. Pepper in there, I'm definitely going to drink it, and it's definitely going to make my heart rate higher. So even though I love Dr. Pepper, not useful for this exact scenario. This is a picture of my hometown. I grew up in a place called the Gila Valley in southern Arizona. This is Mount Graham, and I love it. Beautiful picture of nature. But while I'm up here in Rexburg, one of the things that I tend to get upset about is being homesick. So if I turn to my self-soothe box and there's a beautiful picture of Mount Graham, probably if I'm in a bad mood already, that's just gonna make me feel more sad. It's not gonna help. Lavender oil. Many people find this to be a really relaxing scent. It helps them calm down or even feel sleepy. The smell of lavender makes me want to fight someone. I don't know exactly why. I think it has something to do with the fact that my sister and I are very close in age, and when we were little at our grandmother's house and we would get in a little fight, she would force us to sit down on the couch, and then she would rub lavender oil on us and then make us like sing hymns or apologize to each other, things like that. So that's probably where it stems from, but whatever the cause, lavender oil just makes me want to run a marathon or get in a boxing ring. So I wouldn't include that in my self-soothe box. Last thing I want to mention, I don't know if anyone else has ever done this, but I know that I'm definitely guilty. When I'm sad or in a bad mood, I deliberately will listen to a sad song just because I think, oh, like, this is exactly how I'm feeling. I want to listen to this. But then the song is over and all I accomplished is feeling even more sad. So that isn't what we want to do with a self-soothe box. And the reason I took the time to show you these 4 things is that while initially they all might seem like a good fit, for me personally, they're not a good choice for a self-soothe box. And I just, as you guys think about this and what you might include in your own little emergency calm down kit, be sure that you're including things that are going to help you move forward and not dwell on the problem. So for things that I would include, this is a little comic I found on the internet maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I think it's funny. There's no hidden meaning behind it. There's no inside joke with me and my friends. That's it. That's the whole thing. And I just think it's really funny and cute. And it never fails to bring a smile to my face. Don't know why, can't explain it, but I just really like it. I think it's funny. So I actually have a picture of this printed out, and I keep it in a little, mine's not really a self-soothe box so much as just a little pile of things on my bookcase, but principle still applies. So I have a little picture of this printed out. I have my copies of the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy extended edition. All 3 combined are a little over 11 hours long, so I usually don't have time to watch them if I'm in a bad mood. But even just watching maybe my favorite scene or a couple of clips can really help put me in a better mood and help me calm down. The Great Brain at the Academy. This is one of my favorite books from my childhood. I love reading. Lord of the Rings is actually my favorite book series, but there's a soft place in my heart for childhood books. So I have a lot of old childhood favorites like The Great Brain and Roald Dahl, Narnia, things like that that I like to revisit. That really kind of helps me calm down and remember what's important in life. Another thing that's big for me is spending time with people that I love. I'm fortunate enough right now to be a roommate with my sister. So when I'm in a bad mood, something that we've done since we were little is we will braid each other's hair. So when she's in a bad mood, or if I'm feeling anxious or stressed about something, I'll ask if I can play with her hair, and it works out great because braiding her hair gives me something to focus on, and she enjoys it because it helps her be in a good mood as well. So it's a win-win situation. So I feel like I dumped a lot of information on you guys in a short time, but this really just sums up the whole idea of a self-soothe box. It can be something random that doesn't make sense to anyone else, but as long as it makes you happy, a self-soothe box can contain any of these things. And it does take a little bit of experimentation. Some things that I thought would really help, I find that when I am actually anxious or in a bad mood, they don't really make a difference. So it's definitely kind of an evolving thing. It's a process, learning as you go. But I personally have really enjoyed learning about this concept because when you are upset or anxious, just finding these little ways to ground yourself and having them all bunched together, ready to go, can be really helpful, because no one wants to put in extra work when they're, if you're anxious and stressed about a test, that's not really a good time to brainstorm like, oh, what sensations like help me feel grounded and remind me of my childhood. That's not a great time to be brainstorming about that stuff, but if you prepare ahead of time, when those anxious times do hit and you are stressed out about something, you can just turn to it and have it all right there.
I'm going to share with you something called the best hope exercise. So this is, again, another way to help kind of soothe our security guard, get our amygdala, that non-conscious region of our brain. We're really working towards getting a better relationship with it. So one of the things that we can do, and just to want to reemphasize this, we're doing these things because we're safe, right? We recognize, okay, I'm having a fear response, but I can see that I'm perfectly safe. I need to be very conscious of that. So I get my frontal lobes activated. Then I calm my body down in some way. Maybe it's something from the self-sooth box. Maybe it's another strategy. In some way, I get my body to get calmed down. So I have good blood flow now up in my frontal lobes, because I need that rich oxygen and glucose in order to think clearly. And now is a really good time to ask this question. What is my best hope for today? So this is where I invite you to, I hope you have something to write on. So I'm going to invite you to actually think, what is my best hope for today? It's about 2 o'clock, 2:30 now. For the remainder of my day, what's my best hope? And there's a couple of things when we're talking about our best hope. And that is, we're really looking for the presence of something, not the absence of something. When we're talking about best hope, we want something that we can actually have happen, not just have go away. So here's an example, like maybe between now and the time I go to bed, I hope to feel connection. And that's different than I hope to just not feel lonely. I hope this feeling of loneliness goes away. That's the absence of something. Instead, I hope to feel connected. So think about it in those terms. What is your best hope for the remainder of this day? Something that you hope will be present in your life. And I want to talk about this. The reason why this is so helpful is it's kind of like furrow irrigation here in Idaho and in lots of other places. A lot of farmers use furrow irrigation. And the reason they do that is because water takes the path of least resistance. So the farmers will spend a lot of time getting their fields to just the right slope, and then more time making sure that the furrows are going in the direction they want. And if you look over here in this area, you can see all these furrows, and you've got the water flowing in, and there's some blockage right here. So if these furrows are not well developed, the water doesn't flow there. This is actually really similar to our brains. So neural networks operate in a very similar manner, and that is that neurochemical energy takes the path of least resistance. And in neurochemical terms, this is the neurons that are most developed is the easiest path for the energy to go. So what we're trying to do here is develop neural pathways in our frontal lobes. So we can kind of think of our frontal lobes here as all these furrows in the field. And what we're trying to do here is develop them really, really well. So in saying, what is my best hope? By just asking that question, I'm starting to dig a furrow in my brain. I'm starting to get neurochemical reactions happening up here in my frontal lobes. I'm using my imagination to create a path for neurochemical energy to flow. And what I want to do is intensify this, because maybe there's a blockage, like over here in this furrow that you see. There's a blockage and the water's not getting through. So what I can do is intensify this exercise a little bit. So I can ask myself questions about my best hope. So one question I might have is, what signs would I notice that my best hope is present? Well, I might notice that I'm finding myself around people that I care about. I'm deliberately getting myself to be around people who I think care about me. So that's maybe a sign. I'll notice that I'll be more relaxed and I'll start feeling that connection. Those are things I might notice. Right? Another thing to further intensify this furrow in the brain is to ask myself questions: who would notice? So if I'm in this place of connection and I'm feeling connection, who would be the first person that might notice this in me? So I might think, who would that be? Maybe it's somebody in my family, maybe it's a coworker, a roommate, somebody that notices. And then what would it be that they notice? Oh, Dallas is looking rather connected today. What is it that they see in me? Is it the way that I hold my body? Is it the way I'm making eye contact with people? Is it the way my facial expressions, I'm smiling, or my eyes are more open, or there's a softness to it, whatever it might be? Think about that, because what I'm trying to do here is develop these furrows in my brain. Because very literally, the more well developed these hopes are, the things that we do want, the more likely it is that that neurochemical flow in the brain will take that path. And as I emphasize this more and more, this can literally begin to form a better and better relationship between my frontal lobes, my conscious self, and my security guard. I'll literally be kind of increasing my hope just by exercising hope, exercising my imagination. I'll be increasing these neural pathways in a very helpful and useful way.